Welcome all, and thank you for joining us today. Suzanne and I are delighted to have the opportunity to talk about how Kerzner achieved growth during a pandemic. My name is Hershna Langworth, and I've been working in digital marketing for over 20 years. For the last 3 years, my focus has been around enabling marketers to use Sitecore to its maximum, especially looking at data at a granular level in order to make data-driven decisions to reach sales, marketing, and operational KPIs. I am a Sitecore MVP and also co-chair of Sitecore Customer Leadership Board. So that's a little bit about me. So let me hand you over to Suzanne.
Thank you. I'm Suzanne Foster and I've worked in digital for over a decade, and I've come from an in-house environment. I've cut my teeth in luxury and heritage brands such as Gives and Hawkes on Savile Row, David Beckham's brand Kent & Kerwin, and Cerruti 1881, which is based in Paris, working across e-commerce and digital marketing. I've now shaped and grown the content marketing team at Light Digital and Partners. So at Light Digital and Partners, we elevate our clients' businesses with the creative use of digital, and we're leaders in digital luxury experiences with offices in London and Dubai. And we offer digital transformation services covering all elements of design, development, content marketing, and social to the world's leading retail and luxury brands. We've got a real focus on the verticals of hospitality, fashion and retail, and food and beverage. And we have the very great pleasure of working with some amazing brands. Of course, Kerzner's OneOnly and the Atlantis, which we'll talk to you about today, but also the Macallan Whiskey, La Perla Lingerie and Beauty, the list goes on. And so I'll hand you back to Hershna now to take you through the order of our presentation today.
Thanks, Suzanne. So just a quick overview on what we will be taking you through today in the presentation. So I'll start by giving a little intro on our brand, Kerzner. Suzanne will then take you through the one and only omnichannel content approach. It will then ping back to me, and I'll take you through Atlantis CRO and personalization. And then finally, we'll give it back to Suzanne, who will give you some key takeaways. So let me start by giving you some information on Kerzner. Kerzner International is the leading international developer and operator of destination resorts, ultra-luxury hotels and residences, and innovative entertainment and gaming experiences. Our flagship brand is Atlantis, a water-themed destination resort, including Atlantis the Palm in Dubai and Atlantis Sanya in China. Also in development and opening next year is Atlantis the Royal Resort and Residences, which will redefine the landscape in Dubai. Our one and only brand includes some of the most top-rated ultra-luxury resorts and private homes in the world. Each award-winning resort offers guests a distinctive style and personality born of its local culture. We have resorts in the Maldives, Mauritius, Dubai, Mexico, South Africa, Rwanda, Malaysia, Montenegro, and Australia. Now in Morocco, we operate Mazagan Beach and Golf Resort, a 500-room destination golf and casino resort. And as continued innovation is an important part of our DNA, earlier this year we introduced Syro, a new revolutionary hospitality and wellness experience. So as legacy makers, we love to enrich the lives of people all over the world by creating amazing experiences and everlasting memories. So now that you have some context about Kerzner, let's talk about how we overcame the content challenge during the pandemic. So over to you, Suzanne.
Thank you. So yes, let's remember the year or years of COVID. I'm sure we'd all rather forget them. But the pandemic certainly presented an unprecedented 18 months. So OneOnly specifically as a brand saw all of its 11 luxury resorts close at different times and for different lengths across 2020 and also 2021 for some of them. This obviously presented quite a challenge. How could OneOnly continue to drive the unique customer experience they're globally renowned for at a time when customers are unable to physically experience the joy of the OneOnly resorts? And the answer was a truly omnichannel approach centered around rich storytelling content across email marketing, the website, and complementary social campaigns. So let's dig into the strategy. What you can see here are the strategic pillars, why we feel they're so important, and we're also going to talk about how we executed on them. So firstly, empathy. This recognises that we must be thoughtful and empathetic to our audiences and continually look for ways to add value to their lives. We know that customers faced a dramatic lifestyle change with these global lockdowns. They had prolonged periods of isolation and social distancing. And these are individuals who are used to a lot of freedoms. They're high net worth individuals. They're used to travelling as and when they want to. And now to top it off, they might be working from home and potentially with children running around in the background. So our value add to them is to support them through this transition with nuanced and thoughtful messaging. So at the start of the pandemic, Light Digital and partners developed a COVID communications playbook, and we strongly encourage brands to continue to interact during the pandemic and add value with an authentic voice to the life of their audiences. And thankfully, this is exactly the approach that we took with OneOnly. So of course, next we've got global mindset, and global cognizance is really key. The sentiment and the situation varied per market, restrictions moved and shifted. I'm sure we all found it quite hard to keep up. But we needed to be on the pulse of the constantly changing landscape of travel to make sure that all communications hit the spot. We don't want to alienate somebody in Cape Town, for example, who's gone into a local lockdown with a full alcohol ban by talking about travel in Australia at OneOnly, Wolgan Valley, where we speak about the many wineries in the region. So of course, this requires extreme agility. Our processes needed to be such that we could pivot that content at a moment's notice. And that's content pivoting, the actual messaging, potentially the targeting and the segments. And of course, this required frequent and clear communications with the client. We must also be customer centric. Of course, that underpins everything. We need to tell a compelling story that resonates with our guests and audiences at every moment through the pandemic. And this led us to a phased approach, which I'll take you through in a bit more detail. So it's key when to sell and when to nurture. We must be truly humanising in our marketing efforts in this difficult period. And of course, the end point is that we want to build on the loyalty and advocacy that we already have with the guests and make sure that we're front of mind when they can return to travel. So with this in mind, we'll take you through the 3 key phases. So resorts could transition in and out of these at different times as the market was required. So firstly, we have at home with OneOnly. And this recognises all of the restrictions that the users were facing. We create joy is actually a central message of the OneOnly. And so the programme was to create joy at home in the home setting through luxurious at-home activities. Of course, strictly no tactical booking messages. The last thing somebody wants to see is a book button when they can't think past the next few days in their lockdown. And we also had to recognise different users. From families to couples to different individuals, they all have different interests. And so here are some of the different examples, and we really have to credit the resorts with their huge part to play here in their collaboration. Content included interviews with experts, such as the resident shaman of OneOnly Palmia, an expert tutorial on how to do a facial at home with the spa manager of OneOnly Cape Town, butler's tips on how to prepare the perfect breakfast at home, recipes, mixology tips. Emirates OneOnly Wogan Valley even developed a children's colouring book with resort landscapes and animals. So you can see the content was really as diverse as the guests. And the magic is that this is revisitable content. We could see from the repeat click-through rates heightening, sessions per user on the website increasing, that users were returning and re-engaging with this content multiple times. For example, recipes, if we take that as an example, you might open your initial email, read the recipe, return to it when you're ordering your food shop, and again when you're trying to actually make the dish. And interestingly, I'd say that at Light Digital and Partners, we're very much a mobile-first company, so you'll see the examples here on mobile screens. But we did notice an uptick in desktop usage as our guests were at home. So next we move into the Wanderlust phase, and this really recognises the need for escapism and optimism for future travel. It was a programme of inspiring destination content, and we focused on the USPs of each resort. We identified the users' inner need and desire for travel in the next phase. Plus, from a business perspective, it seeded the idea of travel, throwing forward to hopefully some revenue driving activity. It also keeps OneOnly front of mind, and once again, strictly no tactical booking messages. So some examples of content here were behind the scenes at the resort, bringing them to life in a new way. The global team developed some really beautiful, dreamy video content. We had soundscapes on Spotify, playlists, and further interviews to draw out the USPs of the resort. And in fact, I'd say that these expert pieces performed very, very well within the emails. They were so human, and that's really what people were looking for at this time. So building on the sentiment of the Wanderlust phase, we then move into the here and now phase, which is as markets were opening up to travel. And global sentiment was that largely people couldn't wait to travel. Even the name of the campaign evoked that user sentiment, here is your moment, here and now. And this empathetic content creation understood that people wanted immediacy. They didn't want to miss their window, and some countries, as we saw, went back into restrictions. And this programme had to balance tactical with practical. So we had the privacy and the seclusion of the destinations, rooms and suites as a key message, along with the new exclusive resort experiences such as small and private tours. And then we had the bookings and the offering messages to help drive ROI, but balanced with practical safety measures and messaging in place. And we needed to reassure guests of the safety of their travel, for example, free PCR tests that the resorts were rolling out. And a really important thing here is the geo-segmentation and geo-targeting. The messaging and the content on Sitecore could be targeted to make sure the correct markets received these messages and they were relevant and useful. So some formats here of content, we had itineraries that brought to life what the user could actually do on the resort and highlight these small group tours, for example. We had video content, again, capturing the resorts in Technicolor, and we saw, again, they were very highly clicked through in the emails. We developed landing pages that had content and commerce in mind, and these dreamy videos, these tactical here and now offers, booking CTAs, plus safety messaging were all woven together. In terms of actually facilitating this email and on-site content program, we had 5 key delivery phases which we adopted. So firstly, research and ideation. This was highly collaborative with the resort stakeholders. We needed to understand their capabilities, their stories, and also local market insights. We worked with around 30 direct stakeholders across 8 countries and 9 different time zones, would you believe it, running from our Light Digital and Partners Dubai base. So you really start to get a sense of the scale of the project. We had monthly, sometimes fortnightly calls, which each resort gave great insight into the situation on the ground. Next, we've got content planning, and this was done against customer-centric pillars. We planned empathetic journeys with journey mapping. It was very collaborative with the resorts. As you've seen, there were so many people interest pieces and interviews, for example. And at this stage, we also saw a need for more evergreen pieces to have in our back pocket. In terms of content creation, we worked in a very cross-departmental way. We brought together our strategy, content and design teams to produce empathetic copy, editing, layouts and artwork. And during this phase, with the sheer amount of content that was being created, we actually started the brand's first editorial content hub, or blog, as you might know it. And Sitecore, of course, was used for publishing, and even the basic edit functions were really fantastic across all the lines of approval with these different stakeholders. Geo-targeting and campaign tagging were very key functionality, as I said before. And lastly, reports and insights. So to feed into the next month, we wanted to continually optimize. We had things like aggregated heat maps for insights into content and creative that was working with the user. And lastly, I'd love to call out the leaderboard. So we created a leaderboard for resorts to learn from each other's successes. All the resorts are different in terms of the size, how long they've been open. And so the leaderboard was based on engagement as a true measure of success. And the results are very competitive. It actually made them even more keen to feed into the next month of content. And Hershna will go into insights in a bit more detail in the next section. And lastly, we will look at the results. So I think they paint a really clear picture that our loyal guests and users appreciated this thoughtful and empathetic content that we presented across the channels. We saw really strong user behaviour indicators, for example, strong uplift across open rates, click-through rates, and click-to-open rates. Even in these difficult times, we were showing great value. So as an example, we saw an average increase of 46% in click-through rates, with up to 175% lift in some cases. So again, being on point with the customer really showed in the on-site behaviour. Users were very authentically engaged in the content. This is across increases in sessions per user, time spent digesting this rich content, and overall pages per session. And as the programme continues to evolve, all resorts are open, thankfully, in some capacity now, and we're starting to see positive results across booking and occupancy levels. So the strategy really is working. So I think we've proven here that taking a customer-centric, omnichannel content approach can drive business success. OneOnly as a brand achieved their goals of meeting the user where they're at, adding value to their lives, and showing that they're not a faceless brand. They kept front of mind through timely and relevant content. So now I'll pass you over to Hershna, who's going to talk you through quite a different strategy that we're deploying successfully across another of the brands in Kerzner International.
Thanks, Suzanne. So I'm going to take you through how we use CRO and personalization to help increase conversions at Atlantis the Park. So we've been using Sitecore since 2014, and over the last 5 years, we've been focusing on personalization to enhance the booking experience, as well as increase conversions. We redesigned our websites a few years ago with Light Digital, focusing on how we could utilize all marketing capabilities native to Sitecore, and more importantly, give an immersive experience to our customers and guests. So now the balance of the two, as you must all be aware, is quite hard, as marketing teams always want something that is really beautiful and creative. However, developers want something that is extremely practical. Now, I think we've been lucky because we have found the balance, and now we are utilizing Sitecore for marketing functionality to make better decisions based on data. So what you see on the screen here is how we use Cycle component-based approach to underpin our personalization program, and some examples of banners that would appear differently on a repeat visit. So let me talk you through in detail and break it down for you. So the process was broken down into 5 key areas, very similar to the OneOnly brand when they did theirs. And we first identified the most important guests for the period, especially with reduced global traveller numbers. We had to make every interaction count to help drive revenue for the business, especially with only the local market to work with. So, for example, at Atlantis Palm, these were residents, expats, couples and families who could not travel abroad at the time. So we broke these down further into 2 segments, so our stay and our play. So our stays is for staycation travellers, someone who's spending the weekend at one of our properties, and play is for our local day visitors. So, for example, a day visit to the water park or going to one of our restaurants. So the next step after this was to identify key high visited pages and make sure they had pattern matches and goals in order to build out profiles for our users. These key pages were the focus for personalization with tailored content as they had the highest value to them. So, for example, families who expressed an interest in the water park pages on the site and did not book got a reminder on their next visit to complete their booking. So now moving on to content, and we've all heard the saying, content is king. So educating our content team to deliver several pieces of content for a single page campaign was hard as we were doubling, tripling their workload. However, what they did appreciate is they could now use their imagination and try new content that may have been rejected by their managers before. Now going on to publishing, we found that a lot easier than expected as our editors were really ready to start utilizing functionality within XP and Cycle. So, they wanted the extra pieces of content. They really looked forward to getting results to see what worked best. Talking about results leads me into reporting and insights. So we built a Power BI dashboard with Relevant Edge, which exports Sitecore XDB data into very simple dashboards in Microsoft Power BI. Our digital teams could then use these dashboards to draw insights from the tests that were conducted without spending hours analysing data. So if you look at this chart, I do believe it's a continuous process, as once you have your insights, you're back to identifying the customer and the pages. The other side is I do believe if you spend time investing in understanding what your customers like and value, you can easily get some great results. So moving on to the results we had at Atlantis. As you can see, we have some very impressive uplifts against the base. Some initiatives showed a huge increase and some more incremental growth, which gives further scope for optimization. You can see these against some of our key customer groups like families and daycation visitors. So with results like this, you can make business cases for further investment in personalization and CRO and can demonstrate the success you have to your board. So now over to you, Suzanne, to give some key takeaways.
So I think we've really proven that taking a customer-centric approach is driving business success, and we've shown the excellent metrics even in a challenging global climate. I think the future impact to the business is to continue to invest in these programs and to deliver them further at scale across the different brands in the group. But put simply to you, I think we'd recommend that you need to engage to nurture even when you can't sell. Make sure you're keeping your brand front of mind. Take the time to understand your customer and put their needs first on a personal level, but balancing this and being cognizant of macro and global changes to their mindset. Authentically integrate your content and genuinely look to support your customers and give them the best experience possible. And also harness a mixture of creativity and technology. Hopefully we've demonstrated here that you can do that and create amazing creative campaigns and content whilst utilising your platforms like Sitecore to the maximum. So from our perspective, these are very much ongoing programs. They continue to evolve and we're exploring learnings that each of the different brands can learn from each other. So we hope that you've learned something new today from us. Thank you so much for joining us and taking the time. And we'll now take some of your questions.